Our marine life is severely suffering due to high levels of pollution ending up in our seas, particularly plastic. Deliberately dumping plastic into the water has been banned since 1998, but this is almost impossible to police.
The fish see bright coloured plastics like these, think they're food and eat them. As a result of this, 100,000 marine mammals are dying every year due to this severe pollution. The problem is, when rubbish like this gets thrown into the sea, it gets washed up onto our seabeds. Pollution like this should be decreasing, but it's not. It's rising.
UK charities that care for the marine life are concerned with these alarming and increasing numbers. Dr. Kinsey from the Marine Conservation Society stresses the problem and explains what small things can be done to make a difference.
Well, obviously plastic doesn't belong in the ocean, it shouldn't be there at all, but unfortunately we're seeing a massive increase of it in the last 20 odd years that we've been monitoring litter on our beaches, over 100% increase in plastic. The obvious things that we can do as individuals is obviously make sure we dispose of all our rubbish properly, don't throw it on the floor, don't throw it in a river. We're a very small island, very wet, windy island, so anything that we drop inland is going to end up more or less on our seas quite quickly. So all those little things that add up to, actually saving a lot of litter from getting into our seas, that's all things that we can do. Just a small change of behaviour could actually lead to a massive decrease in the amount of litter that we're seeing on our beaches.
Along with these small changes, there is a want and need for a bigger, more proactive measure to be taken. Samuel Stone, Senior Fisheries Officer, clarifies why something needs to be done.
Well, our oceans are under increasing pressure. We depend on them for a lot of seafood. We depend on them for mining, for loads of pharmaceuticals. We need them just for food. So increasingly we've overfished them and we've exploited them to the extent where they're not going to be productive for the future. So we really need to protect them for our own purposes, but also for the environment itself.
Charities and supporters of the marine life think the answer to save our seas is to put in place 127 marine conservation zones. The government, as it stands, are only willing to allow 31 of the 127 zones to go ahead. So, petitions have been signed up and down the country by passionate supporters to be heard by the government and to get all of these law-enforced zones in place. Samuel stresses why they are the most effective form of protection and why they are so needed.
The 4127 are really needed because they've been developed through a really extensive stakeholder-led process, which has put forward the best options for conservation based on everybody's needs and obviously for conservation. And there's evidence that shows when you have a connection of marine protected areas that there are greater benefits.
On the 25th of February, a rally took place to present a visual demonstration in an attempt to show the support for the 127 zones.
I'm here in Westminster with hundreds of protesters. They're here to approach the government for 127 marine conservation zones. They want a chain of protection running around the British seas to stop elements such as plastic harming the ocean.
Save our seas! Save our seas! Save our seas! Under the sea, darling, it's better down where it's wetter. Take it from me. Up on the shore they work all day, out in the sun they slave away, while we're devoting full time to floating under the sea. Down here all the fish is...
When you have a marine reserve, eventually the plants, the animals, including the fish, they all come back and they thrive.
Some fate, one day when the boss get hungry,
guess who's got beyond the plate?
These conservation zones are a way of ensuring healthy and productive seas. They will also mean that control will be put in place against activities which are damaging our oceans. This is what our seabeds will look like if a conservation zone is put in place, full of life and health. The worrying truth is that less than 1% of the world's seas are protected. Due to this, they are exposed to overfishing and pollution. 1/1000th of the British seas is protected. The marine life that is running around our island is severely suffering, which is why supporters want the full 127 conservation zones to preserve our marine life before it's too late. But putting these zones in place is not plain sailing. Tom Hawkins, a Coastal Development Officer for the Canterbury District Coasts, explains his concerns.
Obviously, we're still going to wait till the end of the public consultation to see what goes through. My issue with the marine conservation zones as they stand is how they're going to be enforced, how the boundary is going to be looked after, and the biggest problem I think of all is just going to be letting the public know, because I think there's a huge percentage of the public that still haven't got a clue as to what MCZs are or what the Marine Coastal Act actually meant.
Unless the public are made aware of what marine conservation zones are, it seems that they will make little difference. Despite this concern, the fight for the zones is continuing. Supporters are hoping that on the 31st of March 2013, the government will announce that the bill put forward for 127 marine conservation zones will be passed.
1, 2, 3.